All right, welcome to another episode of Investing with Quito. I have my co-host here, Jeremy. Jeremy, how are
Hey
you?
guys, I'm good. We're good. This kids are sick, and I'm starting to get sick, but everything's great. That's what parenting is all about, and pushing through difficult things. Right? We talked about that before. So just
Absolutely.
pushing, just going along. So
Yeah, life happens, right?
yep,
Right now I'm healthy, but those winter time we'll get sick. You're saying like even my daughter, she's not feeling well, so she's actually staying home from school. So yeah,
I'm amazed how much of life is just pushing through the normal sick stuff. So like as wanting to like invest and learn things, and like you have to do those extra things, those late night things, like and you have to wake up early the next morning. Like that's that constant little grind of one more step forward and like doing the next thing and doing something, right? Like
right, absolutely.
just
Because life is life, right? There's always going to be things that come up, and we just gotta do it. So I wanted to kind of use this episode to really kind of talk about private money, because I know we've talked about investing and like how do we get money, what do we use, and I want to kind of do a little deep dive into private money. So what's been your experience so far with private money?
um what I found is that private money, it can be expensive, is that people have a large premium on it, right? Because you're getting money essentially without I mean, you have to have a deal, right, in the works and to have it be a good deal for them to lend on it. But there's a high premium on it, like 15%. People can charge a lot higher than that if they want, but there's other good ones. Um, the only experience I've had with private money right now is my own uh, line of credit per se on that. And so that's been something really helpful to use and utilize, like without going to a bank, without um, having cash like right on hand to do a deal right now. That's super helpful. But kind of idea is like, how do you start building those relationships? How do you start like finding those connections? How do you start knowing how to evaluate the proper like rate and things like that? I guess in your analysis. So those kind of things.
Yeah, I think
Also,
for
how someone can get started as
Yeah,
well.
I think for me, a lot of my deals, I utilize private money, and and the reason why I like private money, it does a couple things, right? Like, yeah, you can go to the bank, you can, obviously get a loan, but there's a lot of hoops and requirements that you have to go through. And typically with private money, you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops. What I found out with most private money that I've used, it's all about building a relationship with with people that you know, and people that
Mhm.
you know, and they know what you do, and that's why it's so important is to really be an advocate for yourself, let people know what you do, especially if you're investing in real estate and you've got some experience and you're doing well. It's good to kind of let people know what you do because oftentimes they're interested. They would like to do that, but they don't really have the time to do it. However, they may have some money set aside, right? They may
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
20, 30, $40,000 sitting in the bank, right? And and if you could show them a way how they can get a better return than what they're currently getting, right?
Mhm.
Then it could be a win for them. And it's really
That makes sense because like if you have 40 grand in a high market savings account, you're maybe getting like 4 to 5%,
mhm,
right? Right
right.
now.
And if you say, hey, look, I mean, most of my private money lenders, I'm paying about 10% roughly on the average. Okay. Which, which is not bad for me because when I do my numbers, as long as you do your numbers and that percentage still works, it's great. Right. Because some
Hmm.
people worry
Hmm.
about, man, there's a high percentage. Yes, that could be true, but if the numbers work, then the numbers work. Right. And especially if you're leveraging other people's money and you're not using your own money, right? So
Hmm.
essentially, you're making money off of somebody else's money, Yes, you pay a little bit more, but guess what? It's not your money, right? You get somebody else's money, and in
Right.
return, you got to give them an attractive return, so they would want to lend. Like, why would I'm going to give you my money if I'm not going to really make any money off of it, right? And and
Right.
so and also too, like I like it because I know that I am making a direct impact to somebody else's life, right? Because if you loan money, you get it from the bank. Yeah, your the corporate entity, the banks, I mean, they're getting the interest. That's fine. But for me, it's like, well, why wouldn't if I have a friend or know somebody personally that has money sitting there, why wouldn't I want to give them that interest that I would be paying to the bank, to an institution, right? Because
Hmm. Hmm.
like I know Joe, I know his family, and when I borrow from him, it gives me a like I have a sense of responsibility to make sure that Joe gets his money, right? Because
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
know he worked hard for it, he saved up, and now he wants his money to work for him, and he entrusted me with his money, and so it's my obligation to make sure that he gets a good return on his money and it's safe and secure. So
Hmm.
that's why I like to use private money versus institutional money. Well, I use institutional, absolutely. There's many times where I've used it, but when I can and there's the opportunity, there's a deal, and it makes sense. Utilizing um, private money is a great way to go.
Yeah. So on two ends that you're saying, like if someone does have cash on the sidelines, they can get a higher return from you with the right relationship. But then also your velocity of money keeps going up, right? Because if you have, because then you're not limited by your own bank account or the loans you have or what you qualify for from the bank. You can actually like speed up your process of acquisition, right?
Right. You can speed up your process of acquisition and you can go quicker. And the thing is, too, is like some people think, well, like I would like to lend, but I don't have, um, I don't have money. Like, where do I get the money to lend? Right. Um, you mentioned earlier that you have a HELOC, right?
Mhm.
What's the percentage you're paying on that? On
I'm
your
not quite sure right now what rates are,
okay.
but I know it's higher, right? Those
So
are like
just
6 to 10%, I think.
and just say like just say you have a HELOC and you're paying well, we'll just say like 8% on a HELOC, right?
Okay.
And then you know that there's a good someone comes up to you and say, "Hey, I've got a great deal." They show you the numbers, and you know the person, you trust them, you evaluate the deal, and they say, "Hey, I only need this money for like 90 days, and I'll give you a 15% return." Okay, well, in that case, look, you're getting 8% and you let it out and you get 15%, you just made a 7% difference, right? A 7%
Hmm.
mark on your 8% that you're lending out, right? So
Yeah.
there's other ways that you could have access to money. Like, hey, if you have access to HELOC, well, you can use that if you know you can get a higher return, right? Or I
Hmm.
always like to talk to people who have like an IRA, perfect, right? A self-directed IRA. Um, and basically they could borrow against that money, lend it out, and get a better return on that money, whether it's 10 or 15% return, and it's going to be tax free, right? And it's
Yeah,
going
that's super
to,
helpful.
yeah, that's really helpful. And they can grow that as fast as they want, right? As long as they're getting to lending it out right to the right people and they're getting the money back. Obviously there's an inherent risk in everything. Like this isn't foolproof, right? Depending on who you lend your money out, and that's the risky part, right? Like you want to make sure that you vet whoever you're lending the money out, that you really vet them well, so that you're gonna get a return on your money.
Yeah, you got to vet the person. Sounds like you really have to have the right contracts in in place with that person. And then you also have to be like, you have to know a little bit or a lot about the deal, right? Like you got to be able to underwrite, is this actually a good deal? What's the actual numbers on this? Like show me
Right.
it. You have to understand it and then feel confident that like I can lend, like this is a good deal. I'll lend on this. And it makes sense, not just like, oh, I'm gonna go make 15% really quick in 90 days and not have any idea what the deal actually is. Right. Because
Right.
someone could, you lend out money for a flip and they don't, it's their first flip, they don't know what they're doing, they're over budget, and then all of a sudden your money's gone. Right.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. So, and that's why it's important to understand who you're lending to, what kind of experience they have, right? How experienced are they, and which market they're in, and if you're lending, like so, you have to do your own underwriting as well. It's like, okay, this just makes sense. He says he's getting this property at this price. He says he's got X amount in renovations, and this is the exit price. And and by evaluating, that's why like I kind of mentioned to you, to you before, that was good to know your market, right? Whatever market you're in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
preferably you're going to lend out. If you do it remotely, is like, have an understanding of the market to make sure that their performer that they're working actually makes sense. It's just not a bunch of smoke, right? But at the same
Right.
time, it's so important is like building that relationship and knowing who you lend your money out to. That's the key, right? It's just know the person, know their experience, and know that they have a good track record. And then go from.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage people who lend out like private money, like don't lend out 50 or 100,000 all in one shot, right? If this is something that you're kind of new in, right? It's like, I like this, I
Right.
want to be a private money lender, like maybe lending small chunks first, just to kind of get experience for it. Like, you know what? Why don't I do $20,000? Let's go from there. And then you can just work your way up.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So what if someone like myself, I wanted to go get $1 million as a private money lender, or like I needed $1 million for a deal, right? Like, would you go and find out like a couple lenders or go find one big lender? How would you do that?
With that, I would most likely go with several different lenders. I mean, of course, the less the better, right? I mean, if you can get $1 million, if you can get it from 20 people, right? That would be, 50,000 a piece, right? That would work. Um, or unless you have a wealthy uncle that has $1 million, that's great, right? For the most part, I wasn't get a big check like that. I would definitely get it from multiple. It'd be easier to get it from multiple people, right? And especially something like that. That's where networking really becomes valuable, right? Is as you start to build your career,
Hmm.
networking with other people because the other investors that you network with or the people they may they may not have the money themselves, but because they believe in you, they know you, they trust you, they can go to bat for you with somebody else that they know. Say, hey, I got a
Hmm.
friend,
Hmm.
he's been doing this and he's looking to get an X amount, right? And they can go to bat for you. So they could be an extension for you of you in addition to the relationships that you already have directly, right? So sometimes it could be an indirect relationship.
Hmm. I think that's why also the sub two community is so helpful. There's 10,000 plus people in there, and I think collectively, the last time I saw, there's like over $300 million of money that they can lend out in that community with all their lenders. Like, so that's a huge thing to tap into if you got the right deal, right? If you underwrite it, it's a good deal. You have those relationships, you can actually just like flood it and be like, hey, who's got it? And then you can start to get those relationships to connect with people. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, and I know we talked about the importance of being in a community, right?
Hmm.
Being in network, and that's why communities like what we're in, and that's how we met. and is really beneficial, right? To getting the right environment, the right community, and just making those connections. And it's also like when you're making those connections, that's why it's important just to start early, right? To start building those relationships early, because you never not you're not going to know when you need them, right? It's you rather have the relationships ahead of time, so when that time comes, you have a resource to go to.
hmm hmm Yeah, it's super helpful. Like the community really does make a big difference in local and national and international if you have those connections,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. It's just like in the Bible, it talks about, sowing the seeds, right? And that's the thing about relationship. You're sowing the seeds because as you sow, then later you can harvest.
hmm Yeah, you really have to plant those things long term, right? It helps a lot more.
Yeah, long term. And I always say real estate is a long game, right? You're gonna
hmm
be you're gonna do real we're gonna do real estate till the day the Lord takes us home. But
Yeah.
and then that's the thing. 5 years is gonna pass, 10 years is gonna pass. The only difference is when we're in real estate, we know we're looking in the long term because even at today's prices, one making, oh, this is kind of the homes are kind of expensive right now. I'll just wait, until it goes down. But here's the thing, like we don't have a crystal ball, right? We don't have a crystal ball, but what we do know is that in most cases, real estate does grow over time. The value grows over time. Because I don't know,
hmm
I've been in real estate. If I were to look back 10 years ago, the prices people paid 10 years ago, I know definitely not the same price people are paying now, right?
Right. hmm
And so that's the thing about real estate. It's all about, long-term gain. Same thing with private money. We want to get that private money. We just got to be in the long game, just building those relationships early. And and when we do borrow the money, like, make good on it. Right. That's number one. Like I know for me, when I borrow private money, I make sure that they get their money before I even get mine. Right. And there's times, I'll be honest, like there's times I borrow private money and I didn't make any money. I literally didn't make any money, but my investors made money. What I
hmm
got was a good experience that I could learn from that and move on to the next deal. So
You could, yeah, and then you have those relationships next time to do it again, and you've learned, and you can make it happen again this time.
right, absolutely. Because I mean, I got a story where I was working with a private money lender, personal friend, and I got doing a deal. I was going to say, hey, I've got some money. You have another deal, that you're working on. So as they start to see how you perform, they want to give you more money because they know they're getting a good return on it.
That's super helpful, super good.
Yep. And then there's times where I'm late in paying back the private money, but guess what? That interest is still collecting for them, right? I mean, I'm
Yeah,
3 months behind. I'll be honest, there's times where I'm like 6 months behind, right? Because things happen, things got delayed, but guess what? That interest adds up, and then they get paid. So the key thing, you just gotta communicate with them what's going on, what you're doing, and that's it.
wow, that's super helpful. I think that if you can start to build those relationships and you have the understanding of a deal, like if you find a good deal and you know the right people, then you're never gonna not have the money to and capital to like make a deal happen.
Right. Yeah. It's like if you find the deal, I would say like if you find the deal, the money will show up, right? So, find the deal, the money will show up. But as you build out relationships, let people know what you're doing, right? Just continue to be an advocate for yourself and what you do. And when that time comes where you need the money, you're gonna have access to it, right? Like for you,
hmm
if you're looking for that $1 million, right? start, uh, just going through your Rolodex, letting people know, what you're working on and see if there's any interest.
Hmm. And that kind of comes into like the syndication process of like buying bigger pieces of real estate. I know Logan is really good at that, and that's what he's gifted in, is doing that kind of fund of funds thing and finding those deals. And you
Right,
can syndicate like five people in for $1 million property, right? Like you don't even need your own money, and even you can schedule in your own uh, assignment fee for the deal and get equity in the deal. So
right,
you're farther ahead and like zero of your own money, get an assignment, get equity in the deal, and find you just have to find the deal, right?
right.
So
Yeah. And like for me, I eventually like to get to the point where I'm on the other side where I'm the private money lender, right? Like, hey,
mhm, mhm.
I I can evaluate deals, and someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, Keto, I need X amount." And it's like, okay, well, here, let me write you out a check, right? So I like to get to that point
Mhm.
as we're building our business, right? um, Most of my income is spent going back into my portfolio, right? Because I've bought a lot of properties, as you know, that need a lot of work. And that's something that I've learned too. Is like, man, maybe I shouldn't have like bought so many properties that need a lot of work. But it's always you grow, that's how you learn, right? It's a
Uh-huh. Yep.
I don't my wife says, man, these properties is just like just sucking in our money. But the truth is that's how we grow, right? We're putting this
Hmm.
money in,
Hmm.
getting it fixed up, getting the rents improved, then we could later sell that and move our money, upgrade
Going in.
our portfolio. So, but yeah, it's always
Yeah.
learning in progress. And, um, a lot of times I think when people start out, you get a lot of these messy properties because that's how you can find them cheap, right? And just be able to
Hmm.
that put that sweat equity in and just be consistent. I mean, it pays off. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like to get started, like for people looking at this, but the next step would be like start building relationships in whatever community you're in. Another one would be like look at your own IRA if you have one or 401k, see if you can lean against those things and get a higher interest rate and start lending. Another one would be credit stacking. You can search that or like hacking with credit cards. That's what I've done before. So you can pull at 0% interest as long as it's paid off within 12 months. You can start to make that game happen.
mhm.
And I think the last one would just be like you can find those lenders in those real estate communities online and start like even submitting deals to like My Investor Loan or Alpha Gator, those kind of things. You can start finding like the people in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, just having that velocity of money, get that money going in, get it working, and like I said, I mean, getting on my side, getting the private money lenders, I love using them because I know making a direct impact in their finances. So,
Hmm. Yeah. That's fantastic.
all right. Well, cool. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us on another episode. So stay tuned. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, comment, let us know because we do get to them and we'll answer your questions. All right, guys. Thanks.